Don't cry cause it ain't gon' rain every day. Don't despair cause it ain't your way. Keep it real, make the best out of any situation that you come across. Some lose, some lost, I'ma shake it off and get back to what I'm really about. Give the crowd something to feel. Tell me why you scream.
You are listening to the Jonessa Podcast.
Conversations from the couch.
My hard-working wife. I just want to say that you are awesome.
Oh, that's so sweet. And you're awesome as well.
And I just enjoy doing this podcast with you. And this season has been great, but it's just really made me appreciate this experience so much.
I agree. It really has brought us closer together. We thought season 1 brought us closer, but no, season 2, and just being able to go on this adventure and really, now I think we're sold out.
Yeah.
Like there's no turning back.
I agree.
We both have the vision. We both want this. We both want to do this, and we are both on the same page about it. And I think that's great. And we're so focused. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. Yeah. Like this is what we are doing, and we're doing it together. And that feels good to be able to work on something in a collective effort. Let's be clear. You do all the work when it comes to the podcast, but to be able to sit down and have conversations with you and our couch cousins and our guests, it's wonderful, Joe.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. And you worked so hard. I am proud of you because you are so focused. Mm-hmm. You are making promos. You are doing the edits. You are coming up with these wonderful questions. You are putting in a lot of work. And Couch Cousins, I don't know if you realize it, but this is like a part-time right now. It'll be a full-time job eventually, putting it out there. Yeah. This is like a part-time job, what you're doing for our podcast. And so I appreciate all of the work, the time and the effort that you're putting into it because you're doing a great job.
I appreciate that, baby. It means a lot.
Yeah,
and thank you all for supporting us. It means so much. The last episode was monumental.
Mm-hmm. It was a vulnerable episode.
It was very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And we're going to continue that pattern of vulnerability. And we're going to talk about work-life balance. And this is something that it's kind of been a reoccurring thing.
It's a theme of our marriage, okay?
Because, if you know my wife personally, you know how hard she works. She is an extremely hard worker, and I'm so proud of her. I brag on her all the time because not only does she put the work in, but, she also takes care of her family too. My biggest concern has always been does she spend enough time taking care of Danessa and herself? So I thought it would be good to kind of do a deep dive into this topic and bring someone in, another expert. Yes. So we have a guest on our podcast tonight. Yeah. I reached out to this person. She is a professional therapist, a mindset coach. Her name is Amanda Flood. She is doing big things in the areas of mental health. Yeah. And she really does have a focus on helping out women, and excuse our dog in the background sneezing, helping out women and really providing support to them as far as having a work-life balance. So without further ado, we're going to allow her to introduce herself. Amanda, how are you doing?
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you having me. So my name is Amanda Flood, and I am a licensed psychotherapist. I've been doing this, I think, over 15 years now. And really, everything I do is centered around mental health. So as a therapist, and then I've since branched out to become a mindset coach as well. I really kind of add that in, and I do a lot of trainings as well, just for organizations and but all still around mental health, right? For me, mental health is just a part of everything that we do. And it just kind of exists on this spectrum of you're either doing really well or you're not, but there's different places you fall within that, right? Either really depressed, really anxious, really hard to get out of bed. It's hard to do what you need to do. So you may need a therapist, or maybe that's not it, but you're just kind of stuck in some areas and, the anxiety is getting in the way, things like that. So maybe you need a coach. Or it's this stuff is really impacting my team and work and things like that. And we need to bring this into the workplace. So I love to be able to come in at different points in that spectrum. And especially for communities of color, because I don't think we get that enough. So that's who I am in terms of work. But in terms of me, the human being, like, I'm also a mom, somebody's wife, and I have time. I like to do some things for myself, run and eat. So that's me.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's great.
So you are someone who wears many hats.
Oh yeah.
Like my
Yeah.
wife, and
Yeah.
I'm personally so excited about this topic
Yeah. me too.
because my wife, she's a career woman. She is a superwoman.
Yeah.
I'm regular.
But as a husband, as someone who loves her and supports her and deeply cares about her, I often wonder, is she taking enough time for herself? And is she spending enough time
Mhm.
putting her needs first? And I
Mhm.
don't think that is something unique to my wife.
No,
I think
right.
a lot of women deal with this same thing, specifically with self-care and taking care of themselves. So just want to do a deep dive on this topic and just start off with this, Amanda. Should the responsibility of balancing work and life
Mhm.
fall on the individual whose life is being affected, or should it fall on the company or the specific field of employment of that employee?
Oh, you said we're gonna go with big questions. We're going in deep, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh, that's not. I think that as people, like we're just stressed, right? And a lot of stress, I think, comes from work, right? It's where we spend most of our time. And I think for women of color, I think that can be unique as well because, like, we do wear all these hats, like you were saying, right? And we carry so much, right? We carry all this responsibility, and at the heart of things, we want to do well, right? We want to do well in our roles at home and want to do well in our roles at work. And it's funny you said that superhuman analogy too, because I think we're put up to be superhuman, but like we're human, right? So that means that we've got to break, we got to recharge. We can't just keep going. But I think it does start at work because we do spend so much time there, right? And I think if you want your team and your business to be successful, you've got to invest in your people that you're asking to push all this stuff out to, right? It's like if you've got a fancy car or Lamborghini or something, right? You can't just keep pushing it to the limit. At some point, it's going to need some kind of maintenance. It's going to need some kind of care if you want it to be effective and running smooth, right? So I think if we look at it that way, we've got to invest in our people, right? And then the people, we can't wait for our bosses to invest in us either, because that might not happen. So you also have to invest in yourself and know your limits and take some time for you too.
Interesting. I was and my wife and I, we have this conversation often, and we're having it again earlier. And I put the onus on the structure, on the system, because we all go to these. I'll self-disclose. I'm in the addiction and recovery field, and we go to these conferences and we go to these seminars, and we talk about self-care all the time.
That's a pretty word.
It is. It's trendy and it's a hot button topic, but we often we say the same things every single breakout session or conference. But my thought process and mindset is like, what are we doing systemically to change this? Because we can put it on the individual, but at the end of the day, if the company is not allowing self-care or allowing someone to take care of themselves, then we're just going to keep in this constant cycle of talking about it, but never really doing
anything about it. Yeah. And I think I absolutely agree with that. And I think I'm on both sides only because, again, like we can't wait for the culture, and like the culture shifts take a long time. And that's why I said it's a pretty word too, because it is all over the place. Self-care, everybody knows it's there. But for some reason, people are still struggling with what does that actually mean and creating the time for it, right? It's like, I want you to take your break, but you've got 50,000 emails to answer. And we're going to have another meeting and then another meeting about the meeting and then another one after that, right? So it's like we act like giving somebody a little bit of time won't make a difference, but it absolutely does. I think work cultures are losing more because we're asking people to push out some more, right? And what we do as people, especially as the superheroes that we are, we may still push through and we may come to work, but we're really not being effective, right? Like we're spending more time on our phones, we're spending more time chit-chatting about how much we hate this job, right? So most of your day is actually spent not working, because the culture is not allowing you that space to pause in a day, to regroup, to take the breaks when you need to. We're not setting that precedent from the top that that's okay, right? Like I've worked in systems too, and I think part of the reasons why I've left the big system is because we'll talk it, but we aren't really demonstrating it, right? We aren't really role model. Like we would feel bad to take a day off from work, right? Like what's the point of having sick days if you're gonna make me feel bad about not being there, right? And then furthermore, when I take the day off, I come back, my email list is ridiculous, and I'm right back to being stressed because I gotta catch up, right? So, you know, I think it really is more of a word, and there's few places I think that are very progressive that are embracing this as like a culture of change. But they also see the benefits, right? You can get people to do more if you invest in them, and financially you actually save more too, right? I think depending on the size of the organization, you can stem to save millions of dollars a year in cost because of things like health insurance and people maximizing it more, things on like sick leave, which you have to pay out for, and people not being at work, and you're losing out on that too. So it is costly not to support your employees, but you've got to want to kind of go through the ups and downs of change to get to that place where it really works. That said, you can't wait for your boss. Take your sick day.
I'm glad you said that. I heard my wife say out.
Well,
Oh,
you know, I am the odd man out, but it's okay. You know what? I'm okay with it today. I'm fine.
talk to me. What happened?
I also think that you should set boundaries for yourself. So if I say I'm going to work until like 5 o'clock, then after 5, I'm not responding to your email. I'm not responding to your text message. I also think that will help to shift the culture of a work environment when you start setting boundaries, because it is kind of hard to change the systems that are in place, because some people are just workhorses and they're just going to work. Okay. And you have to find it within yourself to say, okay, I have to stop. Even though there's like 40 emails waiting for you, I cannot respond to those 40 emails right now. And I'm just going to shut this off, and I'm just going to walk away, and I'm going to take some time for myself. I do think that, my personal opinion, you have to set boundaries for yourself, and you have to find it within you. You do. And then hopefully people will start to model that. So like you work as much as you can, you get done as much as you can. Now you're busting it out. Like you aren't slacking. And then once it's time to shut off, you can be like, you know what? I gave it my all. Now I can stop. I think
I'm with you. Like I'm with both of y'all. So I'm sorry that I can't solve this either way.
We are polar opposites when it comes to this.
Yes.
He's laid back and he's like, listen, I'm a do me. I'm a, relax. I'm just like, I'm more of the high strung, like I have 40 emails. I'm going to answer these 40 emails. Like,
but that's the thing too, right? And so we've got to fight it on both sides, right? For change to really work, you've got to fight it on many places, avenues as possible. But what you said about boundaries is really special, because not everybody has that, right? I think that's another like cute little word too, but it's like, how do we do that, right? And it takes a lot within the person. Like you've got to really kind of search yourself and do your own sort of work to understand what that means for you. Because I think even like culturally, or just whatever your background is, a lot of times boundaries isn't something that we teach, right? We teach that you've got to show up for people, you got to help people, you got to take on the load. We put a lot of guilt behind that too. If you don't do this for your family, then I don't know, God's going to strike you down. I don't know, but we put all this pressure, right? And then that carries into the workplace, where we feel like we've got to work, or I think you use this word, that we'll look like we're lazy or we're unproductive, right? So those messages are already in there. So if you're not aware of your own stories coming into the life of work, it's going to continue to repeat itself, right? So you come from a family with poor boundaries, you're going to go into work with poor boundaries. So as much as you know you may need to stop and it's really wearing on you emotionally, physically, all that good stuff, it's going to be hard for you to shut down because there's all these messages in there about what that means for you too.
I do like that. That was a good point. That you brought up.
Yeah. No, I like that.
I do like that.
Yeah. But it's just so competitive out here, and it's hard. It's like, it's a very thin line, and companies often, I like to say, double talk, where they preach self-care. But if you really are that person who, you know what, I'm going to use my PTO. If you're that person who at the end of the year, your PTO and your vacation is at zero, in comparison to the person that never uses their PTO or vacation time, the company is going to just look at that person who never uses their PTO or vacation time as a harder worker. And that person may be put into a position to rise up the ranks faster. I mean, I think that's helped my wife. Like, she is very successful and has risen through the ranks in her profession very quickly, because she's looked at as she's very talented and smart, but she's looked at as just a hard worker, very dependable. And I think that has helped, but she's neglected, in my opinion, her personal self-care.
Yeah, but you just told her that you have to neglect your personal self-care to rise in the ranks. So what kind of double message is that? So how you telling her to take care of herself, but you saying that, but you rising in the ranks? But I'm gonna sip my tea. Go ahead, girl. Tell them something.
But Amanda, it's some of my personality, and that's just like kind of my personality. It's like when we were talking about it. And I think she brought up a good point when she was talking about like the story, the narrative that you have, like the person that you are at home is the person you're going to be at work. And we had this conversation, no story. And I was just saying, like, it's not just how I conduct myself at work, it's at home, and like things that I want to do, like, we have to do this with Jackson and make sure these are a certain way. It's not, it's like, I want to work in both areas, not just one area of my life. And so in a sense, I'm neglecting myself, not just to work, but to family too, if we're being honest. And so while you'll be like, okay, I'm going to sit here, I'm about to watch this football and just relax a little bit. Like, I'm running around the house, like trying to put some laundry and folding clothes and doing different things. So it's a part of my personality, and it's just a part of like kind of who I feel like I am.
Okay.
And I think that's okay. I think it's knowing how much is okay for you too, because I think some of us are like super driven, right? And in different areas, depending on what that means for you, right? Because like I hate housework, so I'm not driven there, but but I am outside of that, right? But I think especially for driven women, they've got to kind of slow down sometimes too, because it's hard to turn off. We've got to look at like how that's kind of impacting different areas, right? And it's even interesting to hear, like, how come he's okay with sitting down chilling, and you're like,
but he helps because like during the week, like I get home later, so he's the one that cooks.
He's doing that.
He's doing that, and so it is a balance. But he is way more. He will take his break,
turn off.
He's willing to turn off way faster than I am. But sometimes I feel like when I turn off, I'm just like, I'm thinking about what I could be doing. And so it just stresses me out even more. So I might as well just go do it.
So maybe I would say maybe even like challenge yourself then to just be okay with not doing sometimes and see what that feels like, right? Because we tend to I don't want to say suffer, right? But I think more things come up in our lives because we're constantly going, right? So whether it may be like physically we get sick or we get overwhelmed a little bit more, right? Or it's probably a tinge of like anxiety in that background where I got to like go. And even still, again, like what are the messages somewhere in there that's saying that I have to keep going as opposed to like easing up a little bit, right? Because I think we deserve rest. Again, just like that car, if it keeps going, something's going to deteriorate and something eventually is going to break and fall apart. Like you need your maintenance, you need your rest, you need your sleep, you need your break, you need to enjoy who you are as a person and bring that into your your life too, right? Work is always going to be there. There's certain things in the house that's always going to be there. I think that's okay too. And just to double back to that point on women having to work more and the whole PTO thing, I think that's part of our issue, is that women are underpaid and they have to work more, right, to get to just the closest level of what our male counterparts are at, right? And I think that pressure is also there in the back of our heads too, and it makes us have to make these tough decisions, right, about choosing ourselves or how we kind of show up at work. But I think even in the last year, we've seen that that's not sustainable across the board. We're at like record numbers of resignations right now. And a big part of that is the culture of work and how supportive you are of your employees, right? A lot of people are starting over because of that business-wise and losing really good people.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I want to touch on next, because in a recent Forbes magazine article stated that women's contributions to the workplace culture are largely unrecognized and unrewarded, and that women face a historically high risk of burnout. This article also stated that women of color in particular are not getting the support they need. In your professional opinion, does the lack of recognition and reward cause women to put more energy and effort into their work, which in turn causes them to neglect other aspects of their life? And secondly, do women of color feel as though they need to overcompensate in their careers because they are not only women, but minority women as well?
That's a loaded question.
It is, right? But hell yeah, we're behind, right? Like it's like you got white men, you got black men, you got white women, and then you got us, right? So, you know, I run. So it's like, in the sense, you're in the back. So you got to work harder to even like catch up, or so that gap doesn't even close, like you can close the gap and doesn't widen, right? So, you know, we are working against so much, and I think we're very aware of that. And again, going back to this idea of we're trying to be almost perfect, right? So that they see us at work and maybe we can get those promotions and things like that, right? Or even again with home life, like there's this expectation we're supposed to hold everything together and be everything and do everything, and like we're carrying all of that. So I think it's a lot harder for women in that sense. This idea of like recognition, I can kind of see that, because who doesn't like to be recognized? You know, it makes you feel good, right? So I think I won't say a lot of workplaces, but I think there are workspaces that they don't quite infuse that enough, maybe for all their workers, right? That acknowledgement, so you know that you're doing well. Because if you don't know, if you don't have that like milestone and that marker, then you're like, okay, I guess it's not working. I've got to work harder, right? And we all love to be seen. We all love to be acknowledged. So maybe there's a lack of that too that could also be improved on. But historically, we've always been behind, right? So historically, we're more likely to experience burnout because we're constantly going. And then I think emotionally, it touches on this place of like, I'm not enough, right? So I think when I see people in my practice, I think a lot of it is because they're overwhelmed with either they're working hard and not getting far, or they've done all the right things and they've reached a point in their career that they're not even really satisfied with that too. So there's a lot of competing things happening, I think, for women. Yeah.
Have you dealt with that in your profession, or because you have experienced a lot of success in a short period of time?
I do feel like there's little to no room for error. And if you make a mistake or if you mess up, it's like put on a magnifying glass, and they're going to be sure to call you out about it. But if your counterpart were to do it, maybe nothing would be
not quite the same.
Yeah,
Right.
It's not quite the same. And so you do, personally, I feel like, yes, I have to make sure I have myself together because I know I am under a microscope. That's how I feel. I do. Like, and it's hard and it's stressful. And then you don't want to play into the narrative. It's like, you have to be nice to people. Good morning. How are you?
Right.
You don't want to have to play into that stereotype, because when you do have to be stern and when you do have to make a correction, then, oh, well, she's being that black. Well, no, I'm not. No, I'm just doing my job, doing what I have to do and making the correction. But people like to put you in those narratives that aren't necessarily true. And so you just feel like all the time, you're just on like
you're fighting all those two, right? Because it's like, it's there, right?
Yes.
So I'm trying not to look that way, but I'm trying to figure out, well, how do I tell you this is a problem, right? I'm trying to show up and do this, but then you're acting as if what I'm doing is not enough. So yeah, I think we're sort of like hyper aware of those things, right? And that can definitely be stressful. And sometimes people really internalize that. And it's like, well, does it mean that I am not enough, right? And that I'm not doing enough and that I can't achieve enough. And that can also be hard on the psyche as well.
So what do you do? What do you do?
Wait a minute.
I love it.
Oh my gosh. I think it's being very intentional with your time. And I think even being intentional with like, is this what I want to do? Right. And am I doing this for me? Am I doing this to prove something? And then at the end of the day, choose a culture that really supports me and in the way that that reflects like my values, I think, and that also kind of value me, right? I think sometimes we go into things and it's like, okay, this is what I should do. I should be that accountant. I should but is it really what you want, right? And if it is, okay, cool, then how do I make that work? And that may be pausing during your day to make sure that you're not overcompensating in some way to meet someone else's expectations. Like, are you meeting your own, right? Are you, like you're saying, like, I want to shut off at 5. Am I aligning myself so that I'm ready to shut off at 5, right? Am I taking care of myself? Like, okay, this was a tough meeting, though. That was a tough end of year evaluation. Like, what do I need to do to take care of myself? So I think slowing down intentionally, to put in those breaks, taking those lunch breaks, taking your walks, breathing. I find things like mindfulness super helpful. And then sometimes taking a hard pause to just reevaluate if this is really where you want to be in terms of work and what exactly am I trying to prove and who am I trying to prove it to?
Yeah, I agree with all that. And just we have to look at these things at a macro level and not a micro level, and just the system in general. And even though I'm a minority, I'm in the majority as far as leadership, because I am a male, and I do have 3 females that report, supervisors that report directly to me. I'm the director of my facility. And so one of the things I'm very mindful of to kind of change the system is I give recognition when it's due. So when I am given credit for doing something well by my superiors, and I know as a male that I got the help, or I actually got the support, or it was the idea of one of my female supervisors, I'm going to shine the spotlight on them. I'm not going to take the credit for myself. So I'm going to say, I appreciate that, but actually it was her idea. It was her that actually got this, thing off the ground. So she needs to be recognized more than I do. And I think if we all can be a little bit more accountable and not be so selfish. And I know when you're dealing in the work environment, it's shark infested waters, because it's a race to the top. That's capitalism. That's just how our society is structured. But I think if you can just really put in an effort to really recognize, I think a lot of women have really not been recognized, and even women of color to even a degree have not been recognized for the contributions that they've made to the workplace and heck to the world in general.
Right. So, but it's like we're fighting for our voice to be heard and just to be seen, right? But I think what you do or you did in that situation is you gave way for their voice, right? Because you're like, no, it wasn't just me. It was these other folks that I work with, right? And if we could think about that in work, it's like, how can we include more people so they feel a part of something, right? Because it's when people don't feel a part of something because you're not caring about how they feel emotionally, giving them time to do their work, all that stuff, they start to disengage. And when they disengage, that's costing you. So I think from a larger company perspective, when you're talking about like dollars and cents, that's costing you dollars and cents, right? If that's where you want to go. And once they disengage, it's so much harder to get them back, right? So I think just allowing people more spaces to be heard, so including them on meetings, problem solving with them, getting to know like their perspective. I think even all of that changes things, because when they feel like they're a part of things, like they're with you, when they understand your mission, your direction, and why you want things done, they're with you. And the people at the bottom, they need that the most, because they're probably working the hardest and they probably have the best ideas too. And they're probably the most likely to also kind of burn out and at this rate kind of peace out, because they're just not feeling this stuff no more. Hard work is played out. We got a different generation coming up too, where it's like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I think companies have to be mindful of. Like, work ethic is changing, right? I think one sniff of work being too hard or not supportive, people are like, no, I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Wow.
I agree with
Wow,
that.
that's profound.
Yeah.
That is very profound.
Very good point.
Yeah. Amanda, as a male, as a husband, what can I do? Start off with me, the individual, to better support my wife in making sure that she is not burning herself out, but at the same time, understanding like that she's dealing with a lot more than I am in terms of, putting herself out there and making sure that, she's being looked at in a positive manner. And so what can I do individually and what can men do collectively to make this situation a lot better?
Yeah, and I love this question, right? And I love it in the sense too of this parallel between like home and work, because I think it's a similar style of communicating, right? And the same idea of giving voice and letting the person know that they're seen, right? So I think it's even for yourself to take time out at times and really reevaluate, like, am I making sure that she feels seen, right? As hard as she's working, am I giving her credit for that, right? Am I making sure to invite her voice into certain decisions, even if I think it's really simple, right? But, maybe because she's not there as much because of work, she may miss certain things. How am I bringing her into those conversations? Just like at work, how am I bringing these female voices, these Black and brown voices into conversations as well, and making sure that they feel like they're a part of things. So I think simply asking, like, what do you need? Because sometimes I think we feel like we got it too, but maybe we're missing something, right? So I think that's important too. And knowing her unique love language and what that might be, right? Does she like presents? Does she like touch? Does she like whatever it may be? How can I be conscious of that? And at times maybe go out of my way to give her that, because I know as good as she may look and as good as she may be showing up, she's probably not letting me know what's exactly happening on the inside, because she's got to keep it together for all those parts and all those roles that she's serving and doing.
Wow.
Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate it.
I got you.
Thank you so much. Are you listening?
Yeah.
Now tell me what's resonating with you? What are you getting from this?
What am I getting from it?
From hubby.
Wow. You're great. Jonessa audience, she is great.
Couch Cousins, listen. Amanda coming through.
Oh my goodness. No, I completely agree. And a lot of the things that you said really resonated with me, because I'll be honest, I feel kind of selfish now, because this has been an ongoing conversation between the two of us, because I'm so focused on how hard she works and the things that selfishly I felt like I wasn't getting, but I wasn't even looking at, why does she feel like she needs to work so hard? And what are some areas that I can do to kind of support her to maybe even feel like she doesn't have to do as much, or just feel better about the situation. So, I definitely took a lot away from that and feel kind of bad now.
I'm glad you do.
Hard.
And you're a good man. Not coming for you, you're a good man, but I think she's able to articulate what has been going on for these last 10 years between our relationship. She's able to kind of tell you and show you, and our couch cousins too, like, how it feels sometimes in these roles and what we're going through. And sometimes you just need a little bit of understanding. And when you feel like you're not getting understanding from a lot of different parties, you just feel like you're on an island by yourself. And so it's horrible. And so that's sometimes where you can put yourself on accident. So I'm glad that you put that in a way for you to understand.
And I'll tell you one more thing, because this is super important to me. And it's always been important to me, I think, as a mom in particular. I think like speak highly of her, right? Especially to the kids, right? Because I mean, kids are great because once things are stable, they're fine. But, you know, if it is that she works late and she may miss things and, you know, whatever capacity, I think remembering to like honor her within that, where it's like, yeah, mom is working really hard because she loves you, right? Or, you know, she's doing whatever it is she wants to do, and she's pursuing her dream and blah, blah, blah. So they really understand like the commitment and the sacrifice that she's making, especially as like this career driven woman or this entrepreneur or whatever else too. I think remember to bring that value back into the home too.
Wow. That is amazing. I love that. I love that. I'm definitely going to keep that with me. Man, you have been so amazing. Oh my goodness.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for helping us out. Let our audience know where to find you. Leave your contact information and your social media information. And Couch Cousins, I'm begging you. She's the truth. She's the truth. Yes, get in contact with this woman. So how can our audience members find you, Amanda?
For sure. And I think first, I also want to say I think it's beautiful what you guys are doing and that you're doing it together, right? I think it's so powerful to see our people and faces that look like us doing things like this, right? I think in our community, we don't have enough good examples. And even just that you're like this gateway for such amazing information, which we also don't have. So I want to first say thank you to the both of you and what you're doing, and even being like vulnerable and open and putting each other out there too in such a supportive way. I applaud that. Right? So we applaud you.
Awesome.
So to find me, amandafludd.com, Amanda, and Flood, FLUDD. And then I'm also on Instagram as well at amanda.flood. And that's a great starting point. And we can always connect that way. My contact information is on either one of those networks. So I think in whatever capacity you need support, even if you're not sure, you just have questions, I think when it comes to anything, again, in the realm of mental health, reach out and we'll try to best direct you for sure.
Awesome. Well, you have heard it here first, Couch Cousins. Please get in contact with her if you need her. She is awesome, amazing, extremely knowledgeable.
And real too. Real and realistic.
Yes.
And follow me on Instagram, even if you don't think you need me. Let's go.
Yes. You heard her. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Amanda. You a lot, Amanda. You've been awesome.
You're awesome.
We're going to go ahead and call this an episode. Thank you all so much for listening to us and supporting us. Until next time, you have listened to another episode of the Jonessa Podcast.
Conversations from the Couch.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.